Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast with Trevor Rosenthal is brought to you by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. We love Compassion. We love what they're about. We love what they stand for. We love that we get to be partners with them. We want to direct you to their website so you can learn more about the great work they're doing. Compassion.com/sportspectrum. That's the website. Compassion.com/sportspectrum. Check it out, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Compassion later on in the podcast. Really excited to welcome Trevor Rosenthal from the Kansas City Royals to Sports Spectrum. Trevor was selected in the 21st round of the 2009 MLB Draft by the St. Louis Cardinals, and that's probably the team that you think of when you hear the name Trevor Rosenthal. 3 years later, July 18th, 2012, he became the 2000th player in St. Louis Cardinals history to make their Major League Baseball debut, and he does it at the age of 22 years old. And Trevor started to have a lot of success at a young age, including 2013, when he's pitching really well and helping the Cardinals to a National League pennant, and he finds himself pitching in the World Series against the Boston Red Sox. The next season, he's the closer. He has 45 saves. In 2015, the following year, he has 48 saves, and he's named to the Major League Baseball All-Star team, the National League All-Star team, as a closer with the Cardinals. And then in 2017, he begins to start to see things change, and he's released by the Cardinals. He misses 2018, has Tommy John surgery. In 2019, he pitches with three teams. He's with the Nationals, the Tigers, and the Yankees, and just doesn't have a good season. And he puts it that way. Those aren't my words. And this year, in 2020, he signs a minor league deal with the Kansas City Royals. And he's reunited with his former skipper in St. Louis, Mike Matheny. He holds the Cardinals record for saves in a season with 48, and he's the third youngest Major League Baseball pitcher with consecutive 40-save seasons. But Trevor Rosenthal is more than baseball. He's also a man of faith, and we talk about how that faith has helped shape him and certainly kept him during the down times of what has been an up and down Major League Baseball career. I really like Trevor. He's a great guy, and I'm glad that he was willing to come on and talk a little bit about his struggles. And I think you'll enjoy hearing the journey and the story of Trevor Rosenthal, Major League Baseball pitcher, joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. We welcome Trevor Rosenthal to Sports Spectrum. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I really like the podcast, enjoy listening, so I'm excited to, an honor to be on here with a great list of names of people that you've done.
Thanks, Trevor.
The work you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, buddy. I'm so glad to have you here. And let's start, I guess, with 2020. The season's upon us, and we're getting ready for, spring training and preseason games and the regular season starting soon. You signed that minor league contract with the Royals. You grew up in Kansas City. So with spring training here, how excited are you about this year in 2020?
Yeah, man, I'm super excited. Obviously, going to Kansas City, my kind of my hometown, place where I grew up. But I don't think that was necessarily the main reason I wanted to go. With my former manager from the St. Louis Cardinals, Mike Matheny, signing back, I feel like that for me was a huge part, and just how God works and how He's kind of brought me through the last couple of years, and to have this opportunity to be with a familiar face and someone that knows me, I feel like it's that for me was kind of the icing on the cake for this opportunity.
Yeah, Mike Matheny. I mean, what an impact that he's had on so many guys in his career, especially when he was the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. Tell me about him a little bit, and certainly not the deciding factor, but an opportunity to play for a guy that I know on the field meant a lot to you, but even away from the diamond as well. Matheny had a big impact on yourself and so many others on the Cardinals.
Yeah, he's for me and some of my really close teammates that spending those years in St. Louis, guys like Matt Holliday and Adam Wainwright, Matt Carpenter. And he's just always been a guy that a mentor, a person that you look up to, and, the way he lives his life. Obviously, as a manager on the field, and you see his personal life carry over, but you get to know him, and, you see the things he does, and, how he treats his family and his wife and kids. And it's like, man, I want some of that in my life. So that had a great impact on me. But from a baseball standpoint, and from the place, from the things I went through the last couple of years, from the surgery, missing a year, and then the up and down struggles, a lot of down struggles last year. Just to hear him, obviously the interest that the Royals had in me, I was excited about that. But then to go online and listen to the interviews and listen to him talk about the organization and the direction that the Royals want to take, and I think that gets anybody excited. I think the city's going to be really proud to have him manning the ship over the next few years, and I'm really looking forward to be a part of that.
Trevor Rosenthal is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. You mentioned last year it was obviously a tough year for you. 3 different teams. Statistically, you didn't pitch well, and I always am careful to say you didn't pitch well, because I think statistics can be a little devious, if you will, when you actually talk to a lot of these athletes who say, yeah, I pitched fine, I just didn't locate well or whatever. But it was a tough year for you, obviously. What did last year teach you as a baseball player, and even, I guess, as a person, when you look back and the difficulties that you kind of went through?
Yeah, I think, especially in this format, I think it would almost be comical if we could pull up the statistics, maybe my 2015 or 2013 stats, run through those lines, and then run through my line for last year, just to give the listeners a little bit of context of, what really was going on. But yeah, I mean, going from super high, being on, all-star closer, and things just always coming pretty, easy. Obviously work hard and all those things, but a standout in St. Louis, and go-to guy in the bullpen, and then to go through a season-ending injury in 2017, hurt my elbow on a single pitch against the Atlanta Braves, actually facing Freddie Freeman, and ended up having to have Tommy John, and decided to miss the 2018 season. Did a bunch of rehab, and like anybody, and a lot of guys that you listen to on here that have gone through the similar surgery, I thought I just did all the work. I was like, no one's going to outwork me. I'm going to work super hard, do everything I can to come back from this stronger, better than ever, prove everybody that I'm still the guy that I was, and then kind of reclaim that spot in that glory. And I guess the Washington Nationals gave me that opportunity. I signed with Washington, came into spring training, and from there, things just kind of seemed to not go as planned. And for me and my wife, that was especially challenging. And for her, and to see, how hard I'd worked, how much we sacrificed, and how committed we were to, the comeback trail, comeback player, make the All-Star team, and have this glorious year. And literally everything went the exact opposite. So it was really tough going through it. But it was one of those things where, as hard as it was, and as much down and just sad times and things, just like I said, literally going, what I had planned and the vision I had, things couldn't have gone any worse. And I just remember feeling through that whole time, coming home and telling my wife, like, this is going really bad, but for some reason I feel like it's okay. Like it's going to be okay. There's something in the end that's going to work out from all of this. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And it took a few months into the off season to get to the point where I'm at today, and, kind of grieve some of that and work through some of it. But to see the fruit that we've been able to experience, through our faith and through God just being good and faithful, it's been completely worth it.
Walk us through that a little bit, that faith side of it, because I have to imagine from a professional level, if you're at really some of your worst spots or your toughest spots, without faith, I just don't know how people deal with it? I talked a lot about tragedy, and obviously this isn't, like a tragedy in the sense of a person passing away or whatever, or losing a loved one. But I talk to a lot of people, and they say, I don't know how people get through difficult times, especially difficult times like that, without a faith. So where you said you leaned on your faith, but there were challenging moments. Can you maybe dive a little deeper into trying to, do what you're doing on the baseball field, but still, I guess, trusting God when things don't seem to be going right?
Yeah. I think, like you said, there's no doubt that this is definitely contextual, and there's so many other people that go through things that, talking about having a bad baseball season doesn't even, compare yes. or relate. But,
of course,
and it just, in the sense of, just the professional side of it and just failing at your job and having those struggles, it carries over because it's a big part of our lives, no doubt. But I think the foundation that we had in our faith was a big part of that. And knowing we were, part of something bigger, and having that idea that in that belief that my identity wasn't, I'm Trevor Rosenthal, the baseball player. And if I'm not playing baseball, that's the end of me. That foundation was there. But it's still hard, it's still something that we haven't really got. Like I said, we haven't had the struggles. We haven't really had super down years. And to go through that was something that challenged those beliefs a little bit. Like I can say, my identity is in Christ, and my identity is in who I am and my morals and beliefs, and not necessarily in how I perform. But until things kind of hit the fan and you struggle, it kind of puts that faith to the test. And that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't, every night wasn't all great. And there was definitely times where I would come home and, kind of question, like, man, like what is going on here? Like, why is this happening? And things had never happened this way. If I had a bad day, or if I struggled on a pitch, all I had to do was basically tell myself, okay, do a little bit better, and it would work out. And that was just not the case.
Yeah. Before we get to your testimony, I want to hear that story in a second. Have you been able to, you spend an off season and you're trying to, rebound and come back again, right? Like you were spending after Tommy John. Have you been able to go through training and even film and watching and identifying some of the issues that maybe you were struggling with last year to kind of prepare you to improve on in 2020?
Yeah. Without getting into it too much, the short of it was throughout my rehab time, like I had mentioned, with the surgery, I pretty much had this mindset that I was going to fix my mechanics, and I was going to make myself, invincible to injury. So the things that I thought I was doing wrong that had led to the injury, I'm going to spend all this time fixing them. So, analyzing my video, every time I picked up a ball, I was trying to optimize the way my body was moving and doing everything I can. And I think through that process, I lost a lot of just the natural athleticism and feel that I had always had. So the short story is, this offseason, I've kind of went back to my old approach, and I'm just going, back to, just moving my body, just throwing and seeing how the ball's coming out, and trying to throw my pitches where I want to throw them, and not over analyzing it, I guess. Would be my answer. So not too much video this off season, or trying to overthink things, and that's kind of be my approach. And I think that has a lot to do, also on the faith side of how, things have evolved over the last couple of years. And after going through the struggles of last season, coming into the off season and thinking, okay, reflecting on, what I did, how much I prepared, and how much of my life I had really invested in the things that I had sacrificed to put into that season. And there was a lot, and it ended up not being completely worth it, in the sense of how my performance was. And so just reevaluating that a little bit, how much stock am I putting into this baseball thing? Maybe over this last year, what I learned is maybe it was a little bit too much. Maybe I wasn't spending enough time in my faith, in the Word, or with my family and friends, or just, other opportunities that God was providing for me. And I really feel like that was also a big part of what he was teaching me and my wife throughout the last season. And so that's been a little bit of a change for me this offseason as well.
We'll get back to our conversation with Trevor Rosenthal in just a moment, but want to take a second to tell you about Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And childhood should be full of exploration, learning, and growth. But children in poverty are often focused simply on living day to day. And safe water, education, medical care, even safe housing are substandard or in many cases non-existent. And that results in malnutrition, child labor, abuse, and hopelessness. And poverty, man, it's a vicious cycle, but it can be broken. With over 66 years of experience, Compassion International has found the most effective way to care for children in need is through the local church. It's why they partner with more than 7,000 churches in 25 countries to deliver God's love and care to children in need, one child at a time. And today, more than 2 million children are breaking the cycle of poverty for good because of Compassion International and people like yourself. For more information about how you can help get involved and release a child from poverty, go to compassion.com/sportspectrum. It's $38 a month, tax deductible, and an unbelievable way for you to connect to a child in need and help them find hope. Again, that website, compassion.com/sportspectrum, and pray about sponsoring a child today. Let's get back to our conversation with Trevor Rosenthal from the Kansas City Royals, Major League Baseball pitcher, here on Sports Spectrum. Trevor Rosenthal joins us here on Sports Spectrum. We talk about your faith, intersecting this conversation with faith. We've done that already a little bit, but let's learn the testimony of Trevor Rosenthal and sort of where that faith takes shape, where it begins, and kind of when it becomes the point when you make that faith your own.
Yeah. I think similar to your story and a few others that I've heard on here, I grew up in a Catholic home. My family, my parents, two very hardworking parents, both working parents. My dad actually went back to law school when he was 30. So that was, a bit of a challenge for our family. And they were just always kind of the model of, the hardworking and dedicated type of parents, and wanted to do and provide everything they could for me and my brother. So I was super thankful for that. So we, going to church on Sundays and going through confirmation in the Catholic Church, baptism when I was young, and all those good things. But I just never, had a personal relationship or felt, connected in the church, or really connected with anybody around the church. It was just a little bit more of a fear-based, or, you need to do right, or there's going to be bad consequences. And I was a guy that challenged that. I was growing up, I was the rule breaker. I was the kid who got, I would get in trouble on the first day of school, sent to the, principal's office, detention. I just wanted to challenge everything. And I wasn't a good student, didn't get good grades. That's what led to me being in a junior college playing baseball. And so it was, so that was always I feel like talking to my parents now, it was just kind of a struggle in trying to find out who I was and finding my place, and just feeling like I really, I didn't fit in those circles. And, I played sports and all those. I played basketball and football, soccer, baseball, pretty much everything. And I had a lot of baseball friends, but it's still just, trying to find my footing. It wasn't easy. And I think God putting me in junior college and how things progressed pretty much overnight for me to be able to get drafted as a pitcher, and putting me in this setting of in the minor leagues playing professional baseball was really the best thing that could have ever happened to me. It gave me a little bit more of that freedom and just the more of, I guess, self-control, where I felt like, I have this opportunity ahead of me, but it's kind of up to me to make what I want of it, versus always being in the school system and kind of being told, this is the path that you have to take. And if you don't take it, you're not going to be successful. And, the whole time going through school, I'm like, well, I'm not meeting any of these standards. Like, I don't show up for class. I don't do my work. So I guess my life's not going to be very good. So, getting into professional baseball and, first being introduced to Baseball Chapel, which the Baseball Chapel program throughout the minor leagues is just amazing. And the people that are part of that, was, instrumental to my faith and providing the resources, to learn and to grow. And so that was kind of the starting point of that bug in my ear. But I still, wasn't making the best choices off the field and, doing things and being involved in things that, weren't going to be good for me long term. And it wasn't until about the time where I met my now wife, where I was in Johnson City, Tennessee, just sitting in my host family's room, laying in bed at night. And it was over the course of a few nights where I just kind of felt this presence. And I truly believe it was the presence of God or the Holy Spirit just being there, kind of like, just telling me like, hey, I'm here. I've always been here. I'm going to be here. To the point where I'm like getting out of my bed, looking out the window, like, is somebody here? Like, is somebody looking, like it was just a very real experience. And, that was the point where I felt that calling of, this is something that I'm going to choose not to ignore. And I'm going to pursue this and see what this is about. And then luckily, like I said, through the Baseball Chapel, continuing to, get answers to questions. And then eventually getting to the major leagues with some, awesome teammates, Adam Wainwright, Matt Holliday, Matt Carpenter, Jaime Garcia, Chris Carpenter, all guys that we've been around that played an instrumental part in just continuing to feed me and challenge me and also, live that out, live their faith out. And for me to see that and then show me it in a way where they weren't beating me over the head and telling me you better do this or your eternity is going to not be what you want. It was just, a couple of guys hanging out and I'm like, man, I like the way these guys live their lives. They're super smart, funny, intelligent guys. And then, I want to see what this faith side is all about and, just continue to grow. So that's basically in a nutshell, I think where I'm at today.
So the Cardinals, and they had that foundation before you arrived. You made your major league debut July 18th, 2012. The 2000th player in Cardinals history, by the way. I read that. I thought that was a unique little stat there to play Major League Baseball. But you make your debut, and it's only a couple years after you're drafted. You're a 21st round draft pick, and they had just won the World Series the year before. So you come up to a team that's a veteran-laden team with these guys that you mentioned, the Wainwrights and the Matt Hollidays. That's a pretty intimidating, I don't know, maybe it's not, but for me, I think that's an intimidating factor to walk in so young and kind of come into this veteran-laden clubhouse of a team that had just won a title. Can you walk me through the way those veterans, you say they lived their life in a way that was attractive. Can you walk us through what that looks like? Because I think a lot of people, not just from a sports perspective, but from a life perspective, struggle with how to balance showing your faith versus telling people about your faith, because at some point you have to tell them. You can't just show them, because the Great Commission calls us to go and make disciples, right? Not to just live our life as an example, but to actually speak the words of Jesus through our life. What did that balance look like for you when you arrived in St. Louis and seeing that? Can you go a little deeper in a descriptive way of what you saw from these guys?
Yeah. It definitely is an interesting perspective, for myself, being around these superstars and growing up a sports fan and always having that idea or that vision of, I'm gonna grow up, I'm gonna be a superstar player, and I'm gonna have all the nice things and do all the cool stuff and I feel like that's probably what the majority of people, view athletes or people in that position. And it was true for me. And then to have the firsthand perspective of, coming into the locker room for the first time and looking around the room and seeing these jerseys and the name tags on the locker. And I know everything about these guys and they have no idea who I am or have ever even heard of me. And just to experience the level of, first off, I think that there's a level of professionalism, and I kind of hinted at it, but these guys, the Adam Wainwrights and the Matt Hollidays, I mean, these guys are, highly professional people, highly intellectual and smart. And, if they weren't playing baseball, they would be successful doing something else in the world and making an impact. And I think there's a lot to be said about that and the attractiveness that brings to just a relationship, first and foremost, before you even dive into the faith. But just how they truly treated me like, I was one of their brothers, and I hadn't really experienced, or I guess expected, that sort of response from somebody, especially at the level that they had and the success that they've had in their lives. And, it just really from that point trickled down into their wives, and their families, their parents and their kids, and just, welcoming us into their lives, inviting us over for dinner and just hanging out and just being themselves and letting us experience their lives and the way that they live. And it was a life where you look at it and you're like, man, like this is this guy has the largest contract on this team in franchise history, and his life looks pretty normal, like you wouldn't expect. He just seems like another guy, a normal person. And I think that is what starts to make you ask the question of, okay, why does his life look so normal? And I think that's where the faith side of it comes in, and they're truly living out, what the Bible teaches of, our worldly gains and possessions aren't necessarily going to matter as much as we think one day. And, so we better, spend some time and energy and our resources investing into things that are going to be a bit more eternal. And that's exactly what they were doing. And, being a young athlete, professional athlete, and striving to be the top, it was pretty humbling to see, the choices that they made, and living out what they believed in and to follow Jesus.
In 2013, you're still pretty young, and you're only 23 at that point, but you find yourself on a team that goes all the way to the World Series. Now, obviously, the result wasn't what you're hoping for in losing to the Red Sox in 6 games, but you were a pretty integral part of that team and that bullpen at that point, and you save, I think, 4 games in the playoffs, including Game 2 of the World Series. You win Game 3. And the Cardinals are up 2-1. What is that experience like, even though it didn't end the way you would hope, of pitching in a World Series? You were, again, so young and having success really quickly in your journey through professional baseball into the major leagues. But just from you talked about being a sports fan, and I'm a sports fan too. I grew up a sports fan. I just am imagining what's that like, pitching a World Series at Fenway Park or pitching a World Series, in St. Louis. That's got to be a pretty amazing thing. Can you share what that was like, that experience for you?
Oh yeah, it was such a fun time. Such a unique experience in our life. We actually had our first daughter right at that time. So, we were toting along a little 6-week-old girl up into Boston. And so me and my wife have a lot of fond memories of that time, for sure. But, it was just such, I think for me, what I, remember enjoying the most was the camaraderie of the team. And, I at that time, being young and being under this, like you said, just these great veteran leaders, I was just all bought in. I'm showing up every day. I'm doing whatever I can to help the guy next to me. And playing a sport from that place for me that just brings out the best of me. When I'm out there and I'm thinking about Trevor and making a certain pitch so I can get this contract, things don't go well. And I'm just not wired to perform that way when I'm, but when I'm in battle with my brothers and, fighting like a unit, then it just kind of brings out the best. And so that's what I remember, really enjoying the most about that time. And I'm surprised looking back today about how fast it's just really gone by, in that moment in time that seemed to stand forever, for me when I was going through it. And now is, beginning to be a little bit of a distant memory. but no doubt, very fortunate at a young age to have that opportunity. And that's a little bit what I want to bring into getting back into this next season, is just, playing. I get paid to play with a ball for a living. So I'm trying to just, act like that, just remember that and treat it that way a little bit more, I think will serve me well. And the interesting thing too about that 2013 team, with one of my teammates, growing up in Kansas City myself, I watched him play for the Kansas City Royals, and it was Carlos Beltran. Yeah. And I remember, when I was in high school and seeing him in Kansas City and watching him play, and then in 2013 walking into the clubhouse, and he's now my teammate. So that was a little bit of a surreal kind of feeling of, my childhood dream coming true. That was a good moment for me as well.
Trevor Rosenthal, this has been great. Last couple questions here. I did want to ask you about blocking out negativity, because I always think you hear a lot about that in sports. So I got to block out the naysayers, got to block out the negativity and focus on this and focus on that. Well, you've experienced that. When you have a difficult season like you had last year, if you just happen to hop on Twitter, it's over, and you hear it from the fans too, but Twitter is where everybody decides to chirp up and hide behind their keyboard. How do you block some of that stuff out, especially in your faith coming into play with that, and just being able to not have to worry about the negativity or the naysayers when they say your performance is this or is that? How do you kind of block that out and kind of move forward without dealing with all that?
Yeah, it's never really been a huge challenge for me until this past season and going through the struggles. I think I always just had that undoubted confidence in myself. Like, I'm the man, like it doesn't matter what other people say, like I can do it. And then to have that thought process and then it not continually happen, there's some self-doubt, and you start to hear all these different things. And, even people trying to help can be a little bit of a distraction. So sadly, this year I had to take myself and take a step back from social media and just step away more, not just because of the negative side, but more so just to limit the amount of information that I was taking in, I think, on a daily basis, and get back to some fundamentals. And that's what I'm in preparing for this next season. And I know in the back of my mind, especially early in spring training or, the first couple of times that I go out there to pitch, in the back of my mind, I'm going to want to think about the struggles that I had last year. Right. And I think for me in my preparation now to prepare for what I know is going to come, it goes hand in hand with faith, because we know storms are going to come. We know there's going to be challenges ahead, but what am I doing now to prepare? And what I'm doing now to prepare is just creating some really good daily habits. Being in the Word, for my faith, and for baseball, just trying to create that muscle memory, throwing my pitches off the mound right now, doing, a little bit of extra work than I had done in the past. So that way, when I get to spring training and when I get into the season and I'm going to face these challenges, it's one of those things where it's just habit. I've done it a million times. I can do it with my eyes closed again. And the results are going to be a little bit more predictable, hopefully, and a little bit more consistent. And for me, I think, those two go hand in hand, and that's what helps to block out the distractions or the storms that will come into my life. I'll have that foundation to go back to and kind of strip down everything. And if things aren't going well, I know I can go back to the fundamentals. And, this is who Trevor Rosenthal is. This is what I stand for. I wake up every day and I'm going to give every day my best. And, I'm going to try and walk down this road that is going to lead, maybe not necessarily to being the best baseball player, but for the best person, the best person that Trevor Rosenthal can be. And so I think that hopefully answers the question of limiting the naysayers.
Absolutely. Now, Trevor, last question. This is one, if you listen to the podcast, it's coming. If you listen to the Sports Spectrum show, it's coming. What is God teaching you right now? What are you learning from God today? You've shared a lot about what you've been learning over the past few years, but I think every day is different in our relationship with the Lord? What's he teaching you right now?
Yeah, I think there's so much, but I mean, one recently, reading through Matthew, we were reading of the parable of the vineyard owner, and bringing in workers to work in his vineyard, and how he paid them for the day. And the parable goes that he brought in people early in the morning to come work, and throughout the day he kept hiring people in the city to come work in the vineyard and work for him. And he, at the end of the day, no matter if the people worked for an hour or all day, he paid them all the same. And he actually paid the ones that worked the least first, and the ones that were there all day, he made them wait to last. And you see in the parable, the people that were paid last and worked the most questioned it a little bit, like, hey, like, how come they got the same exact thing that we got and we did so much more? And I really liked reflecting on that, and it challenged me to view the experiences in my life and what I'm going through of more to have more of a gratitude type of lens in waking up each day, and just being thankful for what I am given and the opportunities that I do have. And they might not be as much as somebody else, or they might be more than somebody else. But not trying to focus so much on how much it is or what it is, but more of the fact that this is what I do have, and, what can I do with it? And I think, today, over the last week, reflecting on that has been really powerful, and I've really enjoyed that.
He is Trevor Rosenthal with the Kansas City Royals, getting ready for 2020 and spring training and the season upon us. Trevor, this has been great, my friend. Thanks for joining us, and let's catch up again maybe during the season and see what the Lord's doing through you as you continue your baseball journey. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Jason.
And that was Trevor Rosenthal. He's a real easy guy to root for, and I hope that 2020 sees a Rosenthal resurgence, if you will, in Major League Baseball, especially with the Kansas City Royals, as Trevor Rosenthal looks to regain some of that mojo that he had in the mid-2000s with the St. Louis Cardinals, and I'm rooting for him, man. I really am. I hope he has a great year and goes on to have many, many, many great years of pitching still in Major League Baseball. He won't even be 30 years old till May 29th, so he's got time here, and I just see God doing amazing things in him, like he said, whether it's with baseball or without. His foundation and his identity is found in Christ, and that's encouraging. And I'll be rooting for Trevor Rosenthal in 2020 and beyond. Many thanks to him for joining us here on Sports Spectrum, and many thanks to you for listening. We really do appreciate you guys when you check us out. Want to encourage you to go to our social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and give us a like, give us a follow over there. If you like Trevor Rosenthal's story and you like what you heard, maybe consider sharing that on your social media pages and tagging us. We'd love to retweet it or share it ourselves and comment. And listen, if you have an idea as well on anything related to the podcast or related to Sports Spectrum, you can DM us on our social media pages, or you can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. That comes directly to me, and I'd love to hear from you. jason@sportspectrum.com. Want to encourage you also to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Lots of great content there, lots of great video content. All of our podcasts are there as well. And then go over to our website, sportspectrum.com. That's where all of our content can be found. You got articles all day long on the intersection of sports and faith. You have every podcast there. You have daily devotionals to start your day right with the Lord. It is a plethora, as I like to say, of content there. Archival content that goes back 30 years all over our website. You could get lost for hours. You really can if you want to. Great stories of sports and faith. Check it out all at sportspectrum.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Have a great rest of your day.